free drum lesson. Today we're going to look at making some more interesting rhythms than we learned last time. In the previous lesson we learned our first rhythm, which goes like this. And as good and as useful as that rhythm is, it is a bit boring after a while if it's the only one that you're using. So what we're going to do, we are going to build some new rhythms using combinations of different bits of rhythms. So the first rhythm we learnt, I want you to think of it in two halves. The first half and the second half are the same, but we're going to change that in a minute. So the first half, just 4 notes long. One bass drum at the beginning, a snare drum on the third note. What we're going to do, in order to make some newer rhythms, we're going to add a bass drum to the second note of those 4, which is going to sound like this. So that's now given us an extra building block we can use to make some new rhythms. So if we take the one we learnt last week, which is going to be number 1, and the one we just learnt with 2 bass drums, that's going to be number 2. Then we get a slightly longer rhythm, which will be like this. Or, for more combinations, we could even do 2 and then 1, which would be . We could also do 2 and then 2, which would be . So even just by adding one bass drum to one part of the rhythm, we've now given ourselves several more options we can use. Now, if we look at one more building block, this is going to be number 3. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to take the bass drum from the second note of the 4, and I'm going to put it on number 4. So instead of 2 bass drums in a row, I'm now going to have a bass drum, then a hi-hat, then the snare and the hi-hat, and then a bass drum and a hi-hat, which will be like this. Okay, so that's going to be our third building block, number 3. So we can now put this in with our previous ones. Let's try 3 and then 1, which is going to be . Or we could do 3 and then 2, which is going to give us 3 bass drums in a row. It's going to get quite busy. So this is going to go . So again, just by moving one bass drum to the end of the section of that building block, we get some more rhythms, and there's even more that we could do just by trying different combinations. Do 1 and then 3, 2 and then 3. There's loads of different ideas there for getting more rhythms from it. Let's look at one more with the bass drum before we add one with an extra snare drum. So the last one we're going to do is we're going to take our first building block, and instead of adding a bass drum, we're going to move the bass drum from the first note to the second note. So that's now going to be . This one's slightly trickier because the bass drum's not at the beginning where we would expect it to be, but that's okay. If you put it in with some of the other building blocks, we could try to get some new rhythms. So let's try 1, and then that's going to be the 4th building block, number 4, and we'll see what happens. Or we could try number 3 and then number 4, which is going to go. You can try loads of different combinations of these different 4 building blocks and see what patterns you can come up with. Let's try one last one, which is not going to be a different bass drum now, it's going to be an extra snare drum. This is going to be our 5th building block. So what we're going to do, we're going to come back to our first one, and we're going to add another snare at the end. So it's going to be 2 snares on the 3rd and the 4th hi-hat notes. That's going to go. So let's see what we can do with that one. Let's try number 5 and then number 1 to start with. Or we could do any of the other building blocks with that. Let's try 5 and then 2, and then we'll try 5 and then 4. So that's going to go. Five and then 4 will be. I hope that's all made really good sense to you. Remember those 5 building blocks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Put them in any combinations you like of one and then the other. You could even do 4 in a row to give you a 2-bar phrase, and that would be a lot more interesting, and see what you can come up with. I'm going to leave you with 1, 2, 3, 4 as a 2-bar phrase. I'll see you next time.